Welcome to my class, Your Soul, Its Origin, and Its Destiny. Video 1, What is a Soul? In this class, we will be looking at the soul. What is it? Where did it come from? When we were conceived, and where will it go after we die? This class will be a Jewish exploration of religion, philosophy, science, and mysticism. Please join me on this journey. Allow me to introduce myself. First, I am a rabbi, receiving my rabbinic ordination from the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. Second, I'm a professor of philosophy and religion at 2 local colleges. I received my PhD from Florida Atlantic University with a dissertation on process philosophy and Jewish mysticism. Finally, I'm an author of 7 books. My most recent book is 3 creation stories, A Rabbi Encounters the Universe. We will explore many of the ideas in that book as we begin this class. Overview of course. In this course, we will be studying the idea of the soul in Western tradition with an occasional digression to Eastern thought. Western tradition is an outgrowth of 2 sources, religion beginning with the Hebrew Bible and philosophy beginning with the Greeks. We will be studying both. Regarding religion, we will focus on the Jewish view of the soul in the Bible, rabbinic thought, Jewish philosophy focusing on Maimonides, and Jewish mysticism, particularly Lurianic Kabbalah. In philosophy, we will study the ancient Greeks and then look at the 3 approaches to metaphysics, the study of reality: dualism, materialism, and idealism. Most important, we will study how these 2 sources of Western thought, religion and philosophy, have influenced one another. Like any important religious idea, the concept of the soul is not simplistic nor monolithic. It is an idea that has changed and developed in Western thought. Before we can look at either religion or philosophy, we must answer a basic question. What is a soul? To begin with, what are we as human beings? First, we are a body. Note I did not say at this point we have a body. That implies something else that possesses a body. To begin with, we are bodies, or as many would say, we are embodied. Where did our bodies come from? They began when our biological father provided the sperm and our biological mother provided an egg and a place for that body to grow. We were already embodied in the womb. With birth, we became bodies existing in the world, but unfortunately our embodied existence in the world will not last forever. One day, our body will die, hopefully far in the future. Jewish tradition says that we shall live to 120 years, but I never met anyone who made it that far. The body will begin to break down into the chemicals that made it up. It will be no more. Our body did not exist before we were conceived. It will not exist after we are gone, as the psalmist says. As for man, his days are like grass. He flourishes like a flower in the field, but the wind passes over it and it is gone, and nobody knows its place anymore. Psalms 103, verses 15 to 16. The question is, are we more than bodies? Most contemporary scientists and philosophers say that we are only bodies. This fits with a philosophical view known as materialism. Everything is matter. We will study materialism in a future lecture. Most of us have seen a dead body at a funeral or somewhere else. If you think about it, all the matter of the body remains. All the tissues and cells are still there, and yet there is something essential missing. Call it the spirit that animates that body. Various names are given for that spirit: mind, consciousness, subjectivity, awareness. Scientists and philosophers do not like the word soul for reasons that we will show. But in the world of Western religion, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, it is the soul that animates the body. Eastern religions like Hinduism and Buddhism take a different approach. I like to use a metaphor for this relationship between the body and the soul that animates it, a computer. A computer needs hardware and software. The hardware is the material makeup of the computer, but without software, nothing happens. The software is the spirit, but it needs the hardware to run. Our body is our hardware, and our spirit is our software. We humans seem to have two parts, our physical self and our spiritual self. The body is made of chemicals, and the spirit animates this body. It is possible that the spirit only exists during the time that this body exists. When the body dies, the spirit dies. Software cannot function without hardware. In fact, this was Aristotle's position. Most practicing Jews, Christians, and Muslims see the spirit as more than that force which animates the body. They believe that the spirit existed before conception and continues to exist after death. They give the spirit the word soul. Our soul is a spiritual entity which was there before we were born, animates the body when we are alive, and continues to exist after we die. When we use the term soul in this class, we will assume some spiritual substance that existed before conception and continues to exist after death. One can understand why scientists and most modern philosophers reject the notion of a soul. At least with this definition, there is no way to prove that such spiritual substance exists. A brief look at science. Science has a very particular way of understanding the world. A scientist looks at empirical data, information that comes through the senses. The scientist then takes that data, forms a hypothesis, and runs further experiments to test the hypothesis. If a hypothesis becomes established over a long period of time, it becomes a theory. According to philosopher of science Karl Popper, 1902 to 1994, any scientific theory must have the potential to be falsified. Science can approach truth, but not give absolute truth. Now comes the key point. Science can only study empirical data, whatever can be seen or measured. It cannot study that which cannot be seen. Science can study our brain, it cannot study our mind. A scientist can study how our body works, but our inner thoughts remain out of touch to the scientist's microscope. Science cannot measure what is happening in our head, what we are thinking or feeling. There is an entire area of reality which is out of reach of science. Science is objective, but our mind is subjective. Mary's room. Can science teach us everything about the brain? Australian philosopher Frank Jackson, born 1943, invented a famous thought experiment concerning what we can know about the brain. In fairness, Jackson later rejected the results of his own thought experiment. Imagine Mary, who had lived in a black and white world her entire life. She had been kept in a black and white room since birth, never seen the outdoors, or the way I imagine it, she had total color blindness. Nonetheless, she became the world's leading scientist on the color red. She knew the wavelength of red, how that wavelength interacts with the eyes, how the optic nerve carries the signal to the brain, and exactly which neurons in the brain create the sensation of red. She knew everything about her subject, how the brain sees red. Then one day, she stepped outside for the first time, or according to my interpretation, she had surgery to correct her color blindness. This is a thought experiment, after all. She saw a red rose. For the first time, she experienced color. Has Mary, the scientist who knew everything about red, learned something new? I believe Mary has learned something new, the experience of seeing red. Philosophers call such experience qualia. Seeing a red rose, hearing a Beethoven symphony, smelling the aroma of popcorn in the movie theater, feeling the fur of a pet cat, or tasting a cup of coffee, all are qualia. They are subjective experiences. They cannot be explained by science, yet they are a real part of life. We all have subjective experiences. We experience qualia. We also have free will, dreams, wishes, hopes, and fears. We experience emotions, anger or pride. We fall in love. We are more than just bodies. We have a body made of material, and we have something else made of these subjective experiences. Call these mind, consciousness, or for those who practice the religions of the West, call them souls. We seem to have two parts of our very being, a body and a soul. That is why this approach is called dualism. But where did the soul come from, and how did it get into our body? We will explore that in the next few lectures. First, let us explore the soul in Hebrew scripture. Then let us explore the soul in Greek philosophy. Western thought is a combination of these two ancient traditions.